Why do social media? Top line, if you don't post, people won't find you. Emily, do you have any further thoughts on this? It seems pretty self-explanatory.
Yeah, social media is really one of those things that you get out of it what you put into it. So if you don't have a presence, if you're not active, people aren't going to find you and they're not going to find your book.
Amen to that. I mean, I could honestly attest to me being more consistent on social media has definitely played a major role in me having access to more readership and like
For sure.
engaging with people that I wasn't expecting and kind of really evaluating what my audience is. That's been a critical aspect of it for me. Plus, the more content you have associated with your book, to your point, the easier it is for people to associate you not in just being discoverable from an SEO standpoint, but also in associating more things with your brand. Kind of like as an example, super briefly, um, one time Emily had the example of color palettes for her characters. And I was like, wow. And I associate that with her brand now. Plus, it really goes alongside her books because if you read her books, her language is very artistic from like a color palette standpoint. So it's very consistent with her overall branding and her writing style. So, a social media pulse check. So every once in a while, we need to be intentional in evaluating where our audience is and how consistent we're being in relation to the audiences that we're trying to cultivate on respective platforms. So where do digital versions of you exist? There might be digital versions of you don't even know exist. For example, I checked under the hashtag for my name, hashtag Kyra Ann Dawkins, and there were posts that I had never seen before. Apparently, I'm not the only one that hashtags under my own name, which is pretty awesome, but you want to check out those things every once in a while. So,
Your book title, too.
Yeah, exactly. So Pinterest, which Emily particularly knows a lot about, LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, Medium, TikTok, Goodreads, woo, one of my personal favorites.
Which Kyra is the queen of.
So, do you have control over your digital image? You want the content associated with you. Of course, you want other people to contribute as well. But if you have ultimate control over how you're perceived, like for example, you want your website to be the first thing that pops up when people search your name on Google, for example, bear that in mind as you cultivate your digital presence and make sure that your control overrides other people's. Would you agree with that, Emily?
Yeah, definitely.
Mm-hmm.
You ultimately would want to have control over your image. You want other people to contribute to that, but you want the main narrative to be the one that you're speaking.
As you're evaluating your social media engagement, your social media marketing strategy, ask yourselves these questions. Where is your biggest audience? So, Emily, would you like to talk through how you would go through this exercise yourself right now?
Sure. So when I started my social media presence, I started more as a writer. So I started pretty heavily on Twitter because the writing community on Twitter is awesome. And I did a lot of kind of searching that hashtag, interacting with those types of people, and ultimately ended up moving over to Instagram with a lot of those people because through just continuously posting on a bunch of different platforms, you kind of figure out what platform that your audience responds to more. I mean, you guys saw the slide previously. There's a ton of social media platforms out there, even more than the ones that we had listed. So don't try to like overwhelm yourself with feeling like you have to post consistently on every single one of these platforms. When I was starting out, really Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn were kind of my main four. And then once I started figuring out where my audience actually is, what type of content I like to put out there, what type of content they respond to, really Instagram is the one that I'll post to now pretty regularly. And then Facebook, LinkedIn is a little bit more for like those bigger posts if I have like a book signing, or if like my hardcover is coming out soon. So like I'll make that type of announcement. Yeah, my Fracture Past hardcover. I'll make that type of like book update announcement on like LinkedIn and Facebook as well. But more consistently, I'm on Instagram just because that's where my audience is. That's where I found them to be.
Why do this? What's the goal of sort of evaluating your community engagement, particularly as you acknowledged, Emily, on a specific platform? So, is the goal to grow your business, to sell more books, to land speaking engagements? Granted, some of different aspects of these goals could apply to different phases of your author journey. In my case, for example, there was a period of time when I was really, really focused on booking podcast shows, right? This is not to say that I'm no longer interested in that, but I right now is not a concentrated period of me doing so. In the concentrated period of looking to be booked on podcast shows, I made some of my content and some of the hashtags I was using a little bit more podcast centric, for example. So, bearing this in mind, as you've made that evaluation, have you found yourself going through different goal phases in creating your content?
Oh, for sure. I think it depends for me often what like phase of the book writing and publishing process I'm in. When I'm in kind of like the early drafting or even up into revisions, a lot of my posts are about like the story itself and like character palettes and like character artwork and like different elements like that. I'll pull lines that I'm writing or like share a line from like my previous like writing session. But yeah, it you want to craft your message based on kind of what your overall goals are, and that's going to change, and that's natural. Um, you're not going to spend the entirety of your author journey posting solely the one thing about your characters. You're going to want to vary it and kind of tailor it to the journey itself. So once you get closer to like the actual publication of your book, a lot of your posts will probably be a little bit more like marketing tailored or like event tailored. But it also kind of just depends on like what your overarching goals are for yourself or your book or your business too. I had to kind of sit down early on in my journey and figure out like what is my goal? Like why am I writing? What is like my purpose in that? So like I had to kind of piece together that I write to share the stories of women in the past and encourage women today to kind of step into the narrative of their individual story. So no matter what phase of the process I'm in, all of the posts that I'm posting in some way kind of reflect back to that central goal.
You want to be consistent with the place of your branding, but as dropped inside of the chat, we go through different seasons of emphasis in our content. But regardless of the season, we adhere to our main messaging goal and we make sure that our content does at least one or of these three things: educate, inspire, entertain. Because ultimately you want to add value to people's days when they interact with your content, and value to your day. You don't just want to generate content for the sake of generating content, because then it comes across as formulaic and like not authentic to you or your brand. Do you have any thoughts on this, Emily?
Yeah, you don't want to just post for content's sake. You don't want to just kind of contribute to the white noise. We're all, for the most part, on social media. You know what that is to just like sit there and scroll and not actually like get anything from the content that you're looking at. So you want to put out content that people are going to resonate with, that people are going to connect with, and that people want to like engage back with you on.
Types of content. So different platforms, particularly if we're talking about social media, have different mechanisms for these content types. So there's usually short form, long form, and visual. As somebody who, alongside Emily, frequents Instagram, there are ways to engage technically with all three, but it's particularly short form and visual, right? Whereas
Yeah.
a platform like Medium or even LinkedIn and Facebook could be geared more towards long form and visual. That kind of balance. And really, like my first thought, like my bit of advice would be to again engage in the content that resonates the most with you, but try to diversify the content that you share by having aspects of all three of these. Like, sure, it's okay if most of your content is more visual or most of your content is more short form, but I think that it really diversifies and lends credibility to your overall platform if you have evidence of all three of these somewhere in your branding. Emily actually did an excellent job of kind of alluding to this earlier on when she was talking about adhering to her main goal throughout the seasons of her marketing. So, what are three identities that you embody in your author persona? So, Mackenzie and I both did this, and the answers that Mackenzie shared were that she is a museum nerd, she's a publishing coach, and she writes museum-y books. And when I did it, I said, I'm a speculative fiction writer. I honor human voices to facilitate conversations about human life and heritage. And I love family. Emily, what would you say? Dun, dun, dun.
Oh, good question. I would say I write stories that creatively share the stories of women in the past. I am also a publishing coach. Um, and then I'm a reader because I feel like those three things together capture kind of my goals and like my presence on social media. If you go to any of my social media, you'll see probably those three things more prominently than anything else. And the same if you look at Kyra and Mackenzie's.
Absolutely. And if you guys have any, as you guys navigate, we're going to be able to share these slides internally for those of you who are inside of the Quipverse, but feel free to pause here and engage with this exercise whenever you can to sort of really distill what are three core identities that you want to hold consistent throughout your branding. Granted, sometimes some aspects of these identities will be more emphasized than others, but again, knowing that about yourself will help you guide consistency and continuity throughout your content going forward. So yeah, it's super helpful. It gives you more of a base to draw from instead of constantly being like, this is my book, and this is also my book, and this is this.
Yeah.
It reminds people that you are a multifaceted human being, but in a structured way. So feel free to, for those of you who are joining live, drop those identities in the chat if you'd like, and we can engage with them as this presentation goes out. But again, I think that this brand identity exercise has been super helpful for me. continue to track your writing publishing journey. Emily did a great job of talking about this a little bit earlier. Events, milestones, behind the scenes. So I think that last point resonates with me the most, because even though the highs are great, people also want to understand the day-to-day, particularly since we're authors, we are craftsmen in a way. It's like there are moments that tend to be glorified, but being honest about the struggles or about the mundaneness of certain aspects of what we do, like lends to our humanity and lends to the nuance of the stories we want to tell. Don't just focus on the highs. To be clear, talk about the highs, but be willing to talk about the lows and the blah. Like, you know what I mean? Because there could be a beauty and an honesty in that. So
yeah, I would agree. I don't know if it's just because we're so involved in social media now, or the pandemic, or maybe kind of a combo of those things. But like, it seems like now more than ever, people are really interested in like the person behind the book or the product or the business or whatever it is, rather than just that thing itself. So don't be afraid to kind of take that step back and share some of those more personal things, and kind of like peel the curtain back a little bit.
And again, in terms of like diversifying, like letting your audience into your world through the behind the scenes, and I've seen Emily do quite a bit of this, circulating, quote graphics, mood boards, playlists, character reels, elements related to your book. We're going to talk a little bit more about this later, but you can create or generate partnerships with organizations that you're passionate about, or become an affiliate or a representative for products that coincide really well with your book. Looking at you, Emily. So there are lots of ways you can continue to leverage this. And if you are ever looking for ideas, take inspiration from other authors, other creators, because at the end of the day, like, great artists steal. Of course, you put
Feel like an artist.
spin on things. Steal like an artist. Don't be afraid to speak about your specific passions. So some people think that when they are really passionate about something, that it's too niche or too weird, that it won't resonate with someone. I can honestly say that maybe occasionally if you talk about something very specific, that it might not resonate with a whole bunch of people, but it'll resonate very, very deeply with the people it's meant to resonate with, especially if it's consistent with your broader branding. So for example, am obsessed with Mickey Mouse. And you could probably do, it's funny because Emily actually said this one. You could probably go through like my Instagram like feed and like do like a hunt for a Mickey, because he's like an Easter egg in multiple aspects of my photos and stuff. But me talking about how much I love Mickey, granted, that isn't too niche. A lot of people love Mickey, and for good reason. But that might seem a little out of place when the broader context of my more dystopian, dark fantasy vibes. But again, it lends to who I am, lends to my humanity. Part of the reason why I love Mickey and Disney so much is because it has cultivated so many positive family memories. And one of my identities is that I love family. So you can make it work. And don't be afraid to talk about those kinds of things. And what if I'm multi-passionate? If there's somebody who I know navigates the multi-passionate space well, it's Emily. So, you want to talk about this?
Sure. So, this was something that I really struggled with when I first kind of sat down and tried to create my social media or like author presence. Obviously, part of being an author is the actual like writing and creation of the story. And so that's obviously a key part of that whole journey. But I knew that I didn't necessarily want my entire platform to just be that. I kind of mentioned earlier, I'm a reader, I'm a writer, I'm a historian. I care about the stories of women in history. I want to encourage women today to own the narrative of their individual story. So there's kind of a lot of facets that go into who I am. Those are the exact things that like make up you and make up your brand and set you apart from other authors, other writers, other people out there creating. So share those things, talk about those things. And anytime that you can kind of tie those things back to that central like storytelling element, even better.
Amen to that. And again, we talked about this earlier, make sure all your posts point back to a central message and goal, not just buy my book. People don't like just constantly being sold to all the time. It's a lot.